Welcome to another episode of the Fitness Oracle. I am your host, John Katsavos, and today we sat down with a very interesting guest, Lynn Cherry, who is from Pickle Ball Fire, which is a podcast. She's actually a podcast host where she brings on pickleball athletes, and she's also an athlete of the sport itself. Now, when I was first introduced to Lynn, I was a little curious about. I was actually very curious about it because I've never heard of this sport before. Apparently, this sport has been around since the '60s, and it's been gaining traction over the years. And because of COVID, as she states in the episode, you'll see in one of the clips that it actually cut a lot of traction, especially over COVID. So regardless of what we think about how bad stuff is, there's some good that came out of it because a new sport has been popularized because of it. In this episode, we talk about dealing with injuries because she had torn her ACL, and the mindset that she was the mindset that she was in wasn't really good, and how the sport itself actually helped her recover quicker from dealing with that kind of injury. And I know the ACL can be a little bit of a heavy burden to be able to recover from. We talk about the sport itself, pickleball. It's growing popularity. The skill set that's involved in playing it, which was really good. I mean, it's really really wide range and quite interesting. And the future of the sport. Where's the sport going? Um, it's interesting. This is a really good podcast. This is a really good episode. I really enjoyed recording it. I really enjoyed talking with Lynn. She's extremely knowledgeable, extremely um, easy to talk to. So I really hope that you guys take a look at the sport. I encourage you guys to look at the sport. I have been looking at the sport, not since I've not when I was in Greece. I wasn't looking at anything except for Greece when I was in Greece. But when I came back, I just it's a really interesting sport to take a to look at it. And from what she's saying, I mean, anybody and everybody can just grab a racket and whack away. And yes, Lynn, if you are listening, you can grab a racket and whack it. You can use that. If you're listening, you can use that. Um, Before we continue on with the episode, I would like to ask one thing. I want to know if you guys feel that you're stuck in a rut. At Feel Fitness, we've created a foolproof 7-day system that will not only help you shed the weight that you've gained over COVID, but give you a proper blueprint that will help you move into a healthier you, both on the inside and out. The best part of this is that we focus so heavily on the mindset aspect of your transformation that you are not only going to love the body that you're about to get, but you're going to appreciate it even more. So, what do you get in this 7-day King Blueprint? You get 7 days live coaching calls with me. You get a proven mindset program that is guaranteed to set you on the proper foot. You get a good and honest look at your nutrition, a 5-day movement challenge, and so much more. So don't wait any longer. Stop making excuses. Take control of the one thing that you can control: yourself. Click in the link, click on the link in the show notes below, and I will see you on the live when it launches. I hope you enjoyed this episode, but don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell so you can be notified every time we come out with a new episode, and you can stay in the loop because we're going to be pushing out a lot of new content on a daily basis. And if you know of anybody who's suffering from any mental health issues, um, one of the best things that they can do is involve themselves in a team sport. And from my conversation with Lynn, this is one of those sports that they might actually be able to immerse themselves in and get themselves out of that bad headspace. So please share this episode with somebody who is suffering, who you feel is suffering from mental health issues, that this episode could be a lifeline for them. And if you are listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, Breaker, or whatever streaming services that you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, as it will help us reach out to more people that are suffering from mental health issues. And don't forget to head on over to our Patreon page and sign up to get exclusive content that you just simply will not find anywhere else. Just for a cup of coffee a month, you can get access to our private Discord channel, monthly workouts, early access to these podcasts, and so much more. Thank you again so much for your support and for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show.
You could have just been a good athlete in any sport and probably come in and done it in a year. But the game has gotten much more competitive at the highest levels. Walked into the gym because I knew that the recreation program had pickleball, and I just kind of peeked my head around the door. And as soon as they saw me peeking in, they're like, "Oh, here, you want to play?" You know, they hand me a paddle and they're like, "Hey, come on in and play." And you know, that's what's great. And the sport is still like that, you know, even though I started about just over 3 years ago. And then once you actually get involved in the sport, and you know, it's like most people who I know who play pickleball, they play 7 days a week, and some of them even play twice a day. And we're talking about people who, you know, they're not pros. They do this for fun and because it's social and it's such a great community and everybody's so welcoming. Pickleball was, you know, growing, we'll say, you know, maybe 5, 6, 7% each year. But pickleball last year, 2020, grew over 20%. Which, you know, all of a sudden, you know, we used to basically say there was like, you know, 3.5 million people playing the sport, but now it's like 4.2 million. And it was very attractive because it's also something that you can take and set up a net in your driveway.
Welcome to the Fitness Oracle, where we have real conversations with real people just like you, with real stories just like yours. And this is one of their stories. I am your host, John Katsavos. My guest today is Lynn Cherry from Pickle Ball Fire. After completely tearing her ACL, she choosing not to have surgery to repair it. She never thought she would be able to play court sports again after competing in college volleyball and basketball, which she moved to Connecticut in 2018 and was looking for something to do inside during the winter. As luck would have it, she found pickleball and learned her knee could hold up in an activity with a smaller court. For the next couple of years, she then combined her journalism background and graduate's degree in physical education and sports psychology to write about the sport of pickleball. During the fall of 2020, she started Pickle Ball Fire podcast, where she's interviewed about 70 people involved in the sport of pickleball, including many pros who provide tips on how to improve their game. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
How's Connecticut? I know it's not wintertime there, and I remember from my past, summertime is really, really beautiful.
Absolutely. You know, especially coming from Texas to Connecticut, I have to say I do not miss the Texas summers. And overall, I love Connecticut. It is a little humid, but it's still better than 105 or 110 every day.
I'm a big fan of the 105, 110, but not the humidity part. I think Texas does have the humidity part up to that.
Yeah, the Dallas area certainly does have some humidity, but it's definitely not as high as it is here. I still I'm great with the humidity. It really doesn't bother me. I go out and play pickleball every day. I do try and play in the morning, and there's a particular set of courts in the Cheshire, Connecticut area, which has a lot of shade in the mornings. So I didn't get to play today because it rained this morning. I was about to head out, and I'm like, let me look at the radar. It looks kind of dark out there. And so I look out and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'll be going today. So it ended up being a really quiet day because of that.
It's all right. I wish I had a quiet day today. It's been a crazy day today. Let's dive into it a little bit. What is pickleball?
That's actually one of the best questions I think I've had. It's a really interesting sport. It's a combination of ping pong, tennis, badminton, and it's played on a court that's about half the size of a tennis court, but it's played with a paddle, not a strung racket like a tennis racket, and something that's very, very similar to a wiffle ball. And what's great about the sport is that it's really easy to learn. So there's so many people who come into pickleball who actually have never played a sport in their life, but you can go out the very first time you're on the court and have fun. And it's the sport is amazing. I mean, it's just grown tremendously. And I think the New York Times called it like the best pandemic sport, thing to do, because pickleball is played indoors and outdoors. So myself during COVID, I didn't play. Actually, I spent about a year where I didn't play at all. I didn't play inside. I didn't play outside. But once I got vaccinated in April, I started playing outdoors again. And I'm not sure what's going to happen in the winter. A lot of places, like when you go inside here, I think they're going to be requiring masks. So that may not be the most pleasant thing to do, is to, kind of play a sport and wear a mask. But you know what? I've had such a great time this summer and made, so many new friends that I'm thinking, yeah, I just might put on the mask if I have to. But yeah, I mean, the sport itself, what's great is if you go to the courts, you'll see like grandmothers there with their grandson, and they're playing on the same court at the same time, and everybody's having fun doing it, because it really is easy to pick up. It's not something like tennis where you kind of have to have a lot of instruction and it's very technique based. It's just so much easier to play pickleball, which is a big reason why it's just really exploded in terms of its growth.
So I was curious about this, and I've been digging in a little bit and just seeing what it looks like. It does look like badminton, but I'm like very confused because it looks like a cross between badminton and tennis, but like,
It really is. I mean, the pickleball is played on the same size of a court as badminton, but the difference is the height of the net is roughly about as high as a tennis net. So really similar. But because the court is so much smaller, I think one of the things that really differentiates pickleball and tennis is there's something in pickleball that's called the kitchen line. And that's a line about 7 feet from the net. And what happens is, if you think about it, especially back years ago when people played tennis, they would kind of serve and volley. So the closer you got to the net, the better off you were. What happened was when pickleball, the sport, was actually invented, they were really trying to create a game that was not only good for adults, but also for kids. So they put in a rule in pickleball so that you cannot go within that kitchen, the 7 feet from the net, to actually hit the ball if it's in the air. So it's like it has to, you can move across that kitchen line if the ball bounces, but if the ball is in the air, you cannot go into that area. And what that does is it takes away the advantage of anybody, taller than you smashing the ball at you. So that's the biggest difference between, like tennis or badminton and pickleball is really that rule. They're just kind of trying to even the playing field, and that rule really works to do that.
Hmm. Um, because this is such a new sport for me. Like the only way that I know about it is that you actually reached out and you talked to me. I'm like, what is this thing? How did pickleball get its name first and foremost?
Oh
'Cause-
yeah, that's a great question. The pickleball was actually invented in 1965, so it was quite a long time ago. But you had three families who they had a badminton net, and they couldn't find the shuttlecock to actually play badminton. So they found some old ping pong paddles, and they lowered the net because they wanted the kids to be able to play. And so it was basically three families, getting together. And I guess they found a wiffle ball, since I didn't have the shuttlecock for the badminton rackets. And so apparently they had a dog, and the dog loved to take the ball and while they're playing and kind of run off with it. And the dog's name was Pickles. So really the sport was invented or was named after the dog, who just loved to run away with the ball. And the interesting thing about the name is that there's so many people that I've talked to on the Pickleball Fire podcast who have basically said to me, you know, I didn't want to play a game or a sport called pickleball. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I've had a number of the pro players say that to me, and they're like, that's what I thought when I started, but now it's like, I hope they never change the name. It's just it's not going to happen. I mean, it's a fun sport, and it's a fun name, and it's really appropriately named.
It's a very unique name. Like I said, like when I first heard it, I'm like, what? This is never heard of this before. And digging a little bit into it, it does seem like a lot of fun to play. Um, sorry, it does seem like a lot of fun to play. My thing is, can anybody play it? Can anybody play in this? Because we all know that, different levels pull in different, like, quote unquote athletes. I mean, everybody technically could become an athlete, but can anybody like go from novice to pro in less than a year?
You know, Novice to pro in less than a year, probably not. What tends to happen in pickleball is a lot of people come into the sport and play professionally. They come in at a high level, so they would not be coming in at a novice level. If you've got like a high level tennis background, if you were like a pro player or a college player or something like that, you kind of enter at the level just below the pros, so they can within a year, move up to the professional ranks. But if you don't have that type of background, if you've not played a racket sport, it will take a few years now. This is in 2021. A couple, even probably just before I started, I don't know that was true. You could have just been a good athlete in any sport and probably come in and done it in a year. But the game has gotten much more competitive at the highest levels. So nowadays, if you don't have like that college tennis background, it's going to take more than a year. And I've been following a couple people who are kind of on the journey to becoming a pro player. And one of them had that tennis background, and he became a pro player in a year. And then I've got another friend who I interviewed on the podcast, and he was actually a kicker, a college football kicker. And he's been playing for a couple years now, and he thinks he has like another 6 months before he can really kind of compete at that pro level. So it definitely can take a little bit. But most people who play, you're just playing for fun, because anybody can, like I said, anybody can play the sport. And what's so interesting is that I've got a friend who I've had on the podcast, and he's he's seen people who like have had Parkinson's and come out and played pickleball, and just by playing the sport, it's really helped with their stability and their mobility. And there's a lady who was really not in good shape, and after playing pickleball for, I don't know, 6 months, a year, her whole life changed. And that's the interesting thing too, is I've got somebody, I just recently put out a podcast with somebody who lost 100 pounds by playing pickleball. So, I mean, it's really amazing what it can do for you.
So you said something important there. Her, the lady that her life changed. How tight is the community of pickleball? Because I know for sports that when you get involved with the sports team, for example, you become part of that clan. And I know the I don't want to call them smaller sporting scenes, but just the ones that won't, they're not going to get on TV. And hopefully pickleball does get on TV and, gets the major contracts and everything. But how close is the community of pickleball?
Well, that's what's so great about pickleball is I'll give you an example of the first time I went and took a look at the sport. I walked into the gym because I knew that the recreation program had pickleball, and I just kind of peeked my head around the door. And as soon as they saw me peeking in, they're like, "Oh, here, you want to play?" They hand me a paddle and they're like, "Hey, come on in and play." And I mean, that's what's great. And the sport is still like that, even though I started about just over 3 years ago. And then once you actually get involved in the sport, and it's like most people who I know who play pickleball, they play 7 days a week, and some of them even play twice a day. And we're talking about people who, they're not pros. They do this for fun, and because it's social and it's such a great community, and everybody's so welcoming. But the other thing that you said too is that pickleball actually is on TV. I know a couple of years ago, one of the major events, it was probably the US Open or the Nationals. I think it was CBS Sports Network, um, had pickleball on. They had like the two finals. But in 2020, of course, a bad time to launch this, but two professional pickleball tours were launched. And so obviously not much happened in 2020, but this year we have pickleball now on ESPN and CBS Sports Network. So it's definitely happening.
Well, that's great to hear. And I apologize. I don't watch TV. So just for the record, I don't watch TV. I used to watch sports all the time. I've stopped watching sports. But do you think that COVID actually helped uh, elevate pickleball to the level that it's at right now?
I have no doubt about that. I mean, pickleball was, growing, we'll say, maybe 5, 6, 7% each year. But pickleball last year, 2020, grew over 20%. Which, all of a sudden, we used to basically say there was like, 3.5 million people playing the sport, but now it's like 4.2 million. And it was very attractive because it's also something that you can take and set up a net in your driveway. So it became very easy for people, and like many things, everything on Amazon sold out, and all the nets sold out very, very quickly once COVID started. But I mean, you can just play pickleball in your driveway. And obviously if you have a fairly long driveway, that really helps. I know I paved a little bit more of area into the backyard so I could have a pickleball court basically at my house. Now it's not quite as wide, but it's got the length. So, and that's kind of the important part. So a regular court's probably 20 feet by 44 feet. And what I paved was about a 12 by 44 foot area. So I think that's, definitely helped to promote pickleball, was many things, the pandemic changed many things, and it it really helped the sport of pickleball for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, from one of the stats that I saw, is it's 4.2 million people are playing this sport right now. Now, is that globally or just in Canada and US?
I believe it's just Canada and the US. And, I know one of the reasons that pickleball is really growing too in Canada is just you've got so many snowbirds who come down to Florida, which is definitely the mecca of pickleball. And so, there's so many courts now, being built out in Canada and of course the US too. And, and even in the US, I mean, you've got um, restaurants which are more of a lifestyle concept, and they put like, it's a restaurant, but then they also have like 4 outdoor pickleball courts and a couple indoor courts. I mean, the development is just amazing because it's a much smaller footprint obviously than tennis, so you can do that in a fairly small space.
Are there leagues people can join?
Yeah, yeah. It depends on where you are. Some places are more organized than others. I would say if you're anywhere in Florida, you would not have a problem finding a league. Now, up in Connecticut, there's it was 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, there was a place called Oxford Pickleball, and I think they have 6 indoor courts. And so if they have like a dedicated facility like that, they run leagues. They run obviously leagues year round. I've got the other place near me outdoor in Cheshire. They will run some leagues through the city, and then people also kind of just create their own leagues. But yeah, I mean, you can. And actually, I've got somebody who I interviewed on the podcast who starting juniors leagues, and there's a lot of people starting to really get the kids involved also.
Very cool. Very cool. Like I said, like I love these. I love these sports that are coming up. That are coming up. I mean, it's great. Uh, but let's switch gears here a little bit. Let's dig into a little bit about you and your past. You went through some really rough patches. You tore your ACL. How exactly did you get hurt?
Uh, I was I was playing basketball, and I happened to be in Mexico, and I was playing with a bunch of friends, and I went up for a rebound, and yeah, I tore it, and it was challenging because I was in Mexico, and you don't have the medical facilities, but I had enough sports injuries prior to that they were able to get me some crutches. And I had a friend who actually flew back at the same time. He had not been planning to fly. He had been planning to fly back, and I think he flew back a little bit earlier than he meant to, just to help me, because it was kind of impossible given that I was on crutches, and it was very challenging. But I chose not to repair my ACL. I didn't want to go through not only the surgery but the recovery, because it's a very long recovery. So I really thought my days of playing sports were over, but I had talked to the doctor, and one of the reasons I went to the orthopedic guy that I did is I said, hey, can I rehab this? Can I rehab without getting the ACL attached, because it's not attached at all. And he says, oh yeah, you can rehab it. And then I said, well, by the time I finished up and was doing pretty well, I'm like, well, can I can I do sports, and like court sports and things like that? And he says, as long as your muscles around your ACL are strong enough. He's like, yeah. He says, I play indoor soccer with somebody who completely tore their ACL, which has got to be one of the worst things, if you've got that type of injury. So yeah.
Yeah, and for people listening out there, the ACL it's an acronym for the anterior cruciate ligament, and it connects from the backside of the top of your shin to the front side of your thigh bone, and it prevents the thigh bone from shifting forward from force. And it's a very critical piece of architecture that we have. And your therapist is right. You don't have to get it repaired. However, you do have to be careful and make
Yeah.
sure that the structure around it is secure. Now, my next question is, what was your life like when you found out that you tore your ACL and, you know, you thought that you couldn't play any more court sports?
It was definitely kind of tough times, and it was I was struggling a little bit, just mentally with, what was going on. And, it was a choice that I think most people don't make. And, I realized that, sometimes things happen and, happen for a reason. And, maybe ultimately, 8 years after the fact, I don't know that I would have found pickleball, to be honest, because I probably would have been playing other sports. I played soccer, basketball, tennis, some racquetball a lot. So yeah, I mean, sometimes things just work out for a reason.
What were some of the stuff that you actually did to help you deal with the fact that, that realization that, you know what, I may never play sports again? And I'm assuming that you love playing sports. So what were some of the tools that you used to help you through those hard times?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, my graduate training in school was actually kind of sports psychology. And like you said, I had just always been active, but I'm somebody who, I definitely use kind of a lot of affirmations, letting myself know that, things are going to be okay, things are going to work out. I can still have a positive attitude about, life in general. So, just getting that positive self-talk going, because that was something that I really struggled with through high school and into college. Was just I grew up in a really negative household, so there was just a lot of negative self-talk that was just kind of, and I kind of really reprogrammed that when I was in college. But yeah, I mean, when something significant happens in your life, I had to kind of go back and use some of those tools that I had used, like when I was in college, especially.
That's great. That's really great. Um, some people don't even figure that out their entire life. Um, do you find that the community of pickleball actually helped give you more confidence in playing in yourself and everything around you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The community is just so supportive. And, it's like if you're not there a day, people are kind of wondering, where you are, and they'll reach out and, connect. And yeah, I mean, they're just absolutely. I mean, it's just such a positive sport and such positive people. I mean, that just kind of rolls into you having confidence about yourself, confidence about the sport. And, that's one of those things, that sport is really good about is, you can kind of see your game improving, and that feeds your confidence. And, it just kind of have that circular pattern that it just kind of continues.
That's really good. It's so important to have positivity in a sport as well, because sport is, I can't even start to name the amount of professional athletes out there in all forms of sports that they have said that, it saved their lives. Um, how hard is it to pick this game up? We've kind of touched up on it a little bit, but like, let's say somebody um never touched a paddle in their life. They're listening to this podcast and they're like, okay, I want to pick it up. How hard is it for them to pick it up?
You know, I think if you can, throw a wiffle ball, you can play pickleball. Even underhanded. Actually, some of the drills that if you get a little bit more serious about the game and you come in and play, a lot of times the pros will have you like just outside the kitchen line, so about 7 feet from the net. You take a wiffle ball in your hand and you just throw it over the net back and forth to your partner, and that very much emulates what is called a dink in pickleball. So literally, if you can throw a ball underhand and up a little bit, you can absolutely play pickleball. It's that easy, really.
Okay. It sounds like this is a very addictive sport, a surprisingly addictive sport. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. That's what I said. It's like I've got friends who they literally play 7 days a week. And there was a friend I was talking to the other day, and she said, "Yeah, so and so is just kind of going through a rough patch, and she's such a good player, but she's just not playing well at all right now." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've been through that through my sports career, and sometimes I'll just take a week off, and then I come back and play much better." And she's like, "Oh yeah, we're so addicted that's never going to happen." So it and like I said, if you've got people who are, they're not pros, they're not instructors, but they literally will come out and play for 2 or 3 hours twice a day. I mean, that's crazy. Crazy.
Is there like set times in during the match? Is there like point system set up? Like, or you just whatever? It's just like play
General
until you can't play anymore.
yeah. Yeah, I mean the games are to 11, so they're fairly short, and honestly, the more skilled you are, the longer the games will be because the rallies are actually longer. So a game can typically take anywhere from like 10 minutes to 20 minutes, we'll just say on average. And I tend to play at a place that's not quite as busy as other places. And so pretty much as soon as you finish, you turn around and look to see if there's people needing more players, or they want to change around. And so you can just kind of play one match after another. But there's lots of areas where the courts are really busy. And so they usually have some type of rack which you can put your paddle in while you kind of wait on the sidelines, and then you rotate in as people finish up games, or yeah, games.
So is it like tennis where you have singles and duels, or is it?
Yeah, most people who play pickleball play doubles. Now that's typically because, pickleball really started as being something that a lot of the retirees would do, but that's very much changed. But on the Pickleball Fire podcast, I've had pros who play doubles uh, say to me that, "Oh yeah, I would never play singles. It's way too much work." So yeah, pretty much anytime you go to a pickleball court, you're going to see 4 people on the court as opposed to 2 people on the court. Now, singles make it more popular. Right now you use the same amount of court whether you're playing singles or doubles. It's not like tennis where you have that alley. So the court's different size for singles and doubles. Right now, pickleball, it's not like that. I don't know if that'll ever change. It might, and that might attract more people to play singles.
Mhm. Yeah, because like I said, like when I was watching all this pickleball stuff on YouTube, I saw it as like always doubles, and I was like, are there any singles events in this, or is it just you have to be part of a team, which is a good thing?
Yeah, no, but you can play singles, but like I said, probably literally 95% of the play you'll see is doubles.
That's cool. So it kind of like forces you to like meet new people, like networking kind of thing.
Oh yeah, and that's what's so great is that it's you know there's so many places now to play pickleball. Sometimes I go to different courts just to interact with different people all the time. And it's just fun from a making friends perspective. And then also just if you want some variety in your game and who you're playing. Yeah, it works out great.
Only reason why I'm asking is because right now you're talking to the world's largest introvert. And for me uh to mingle with different people, it's a very difficult thing to do. Like, so trying to throw myself into an environment like a sporting environment that I've never met this person before, and now they're my teammate. It's a hard thing to do. What kind of tips would you give me, for example, who's a huge introvert, to put himself into that spot?
Well, let me preface this by saying I can totally relate. My mother always said I was my own best company. And I'm one of the few people in the, in the pandemic who's like, yeah, so we've got a pandemic and I just have to stay home and be by myself most of the time. Or, with one other person in the house. I'm like, it works for me. So, anyways, but um, honestly, just buy a paddle and find a place nearby and you will be welcomed. And the thing that happens too is that some people are chatty on the court and some people aren't, and that's okay because I'm very quiet, and usually I don't talk to a lot of people a lot. I tend to find a couple people who I can, just have a more one-on-one kind of in-depth conversation. But because there's, it's really, you can, on the pickleball court, you can pretty much say as much or as little as you want to. So, if you enjoy getting out and, wanting to do a sport, um, just buy a paddle and go out there, you know.
Very cool. Very cool. Where do you see this sport going in the future?
Well, from talking with people in the industry, the big goal is to become an Olympic sport. And I know for the 2024, there would not even be enough time to be like an exhibition sport, because you have to have everything approved and done at least 3 years prior. So I know there's a number of people in pickleball internationally who are working towards making it an Olympic sport. And I bet everybody's goal is 2028 because those games are also in Los Angeles. And given the popularity of pickleball in the US, that would be a fitting time to do it. And I already plan on being at those games because my brother lives in LA and he's like, are you coming for the Olympics? And I'm like, oh yeah, hopefully pickleball will be in it.
Oh, it'll be good. It'll be good to see it in there.
Yeah.
Um, so this, I'm assuming right now it's just in North America, hasn't gone into Europe or in Asia or anything.
Actually, it has. It's in, there's something called the International Federation of Pickleball. There are now 58 countries on 4 continents. So it's in Asia, it's in Western Europe, it's in Eastern Europe. Actually, the English Open, they're, I think, probably just finishing up tomorrow. So that was the biggest tournament in England. But there's, I don't know if you're an NBA fan at all, but Luka Doncic, who plays for the Dallas Mavericks, he plays pickleball in Slovenia. So it's spreading across the globe. Hopefully, it continues to will continue to spread the sport and not the COVID.
Well, I have my thoughts on COVID, and I'm not going to say it on my show, but because it's more about positive solutions to this thing that we've been living through. Kind of touching up on that. How hard do you think it's going to be to reintegrate everybody into getting into a court that is so small?
Well, I I think that, you know, I I definitely think that most people feel more comfortable if they're vaccinated. No doubt about that. So I think it definitely makes it easier. And, even though the court's small, definitely if you're outside, I think that works really well. Like I said earlier, I'm kind of a little hesitant to reintegrate perhaps indoors. But I'm just gonna kind of see how things go. And I think most people are probably not where I am. I tended to be pretty conservative. So I think more people are willing to, go ahead and play indoors, outdoors, what have you.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So you guys gotta have like a World Series, World Circuit kind of thing going on, and I'm assuming like different like levels, different tiers, and professional from like amateur to professional.
Yeah, most tournaments, at least in the US, because there aren't a lot of pros outside the US at this point. There's a couple in England, but yeah, most tournaments here do range from absolute beginners to professionals. There's probably I think for 2022, there's probably 50 tournaments where you would have amateurs and professionals at the same tournaments. Uh, there is going to be the World Games in 2022 in May, which will have people from all different countries. And yeah, I mean that's definitely. And there's also the International Federation of Pickleball puts on the Bainbridge Cup, which is in the U.S. also. And you've got people who come from countries all over the world to play in that.
Very cool. Very, very, very cool. It's good to see it. It's good to see like it grow. Like when did this growth happen?
I, you know, in 2018, I lived in Dallas, Texas, and I had never heard of pickleball. And like I said, I was always into sports. So if any of my friends, who are also mostly into sports, if I would have heard about it from them, I would have checked into it. So did not hear a thing about it until I moved to Connecticut. Now, pickleball now you know, it's becoming on ESPN, you're getting it on TV. I think that the more it's on TV, just it's going to grow exponentially. I mean, and you've got so many courts being built. So,
Well, again, like I haven't heard of it up until you reached out to me, and I'm like, okay, I'll give this, take a look at this, and I'm actually quite impressed. Like it does seem like when you're looking at the pros, they go at it pretty fast. Like it's not a slow game.
you're absolutely right. It's really funny because a lot of people, when they see the sport for the first time, they look at it on YouTube or they see it in some gym or on the courts, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can go out there because I've played sports. I can go out there, or just because like my nephew said, oh, I'm gonna go out there the first time I play, and I'm just gonna beat you to a pulp." And that's not the case. There's actually a lot of skill involved in the game, and that's I think one of the really fun things about it is that it can be really rapid fire, where you really, at the highest levels, you really need fast eye-hand coordination to be able to even compete at that level. Just the athletes coming into the sport now, you have to be at a much higher level than 4 or 5 years ago. Very different now.
Hmm. Hmm. No, yeah, I was like, this looks like I've seen badminton in the Olympics, and it's like it's almost the same thing. Like it's
Mhm.
crazy how fast this thing can get.
Yep. Yep.
So we're going to be wrapping up the show in just a little bit. These are the 7 or 8 questions that I ask all my guests, and I would like to get your feedback on the 7 or 8 topics. With the increase in people suffering from depression from the lockdown, what would be the one thing that you could tell them to keep their hopes up?
I think to keep their hopes up, know that it's going to get better. You know, if you're, you know, depressed and down, if you can just get yourself, out the door and honestly go find some place to play pickleball. I mean, you will absolutely be welcomed. It will I would be surprised if it did not help with your depression. Just
Sure.
just try it once. And I think, well, just about everybody who tries pickleball the first time is hooked. I mean, that's how amazing it is.
You're making it very appealing, very interesting.
Well, if I lived a little bit closer to you, I'd invite you out and get you on the court.
Well, the problem is the border. Not allowed to come down there. Our guy, anyways, I'm not getting into politics here.
Well, actually, I'm a Canadian citizen too, so I've got dual.
Oh, lucky. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
um, what's the one thing that you do daily that amplifies your ability to stay focused?
Uh, I think one of the things that I do that really helps me is besides playing pickleball, I take like a 3 mile walk every day. And, you know, that keeps me on track. I mean, it's a time when I've got no distractions. And, I know you said you don't watch TV. I don't watch the news. I do watch some TV and movies and stuff, but I never watch the news. So just kind of that time to go out and take a walk. Here in Connecticut, it's very, very green most of the year, except for when there's snow on the ground. But that's beautiful too. So I think it's just that helps me focus and just gets me away from distractions.
Very good. If you could pick up the phone right now and call yourself at 20 years old, what would you tell yourself?
Uh, Probably not to take things so seriously. I just was always a very serious kid, and I've kind of had that into adulthood. And I would probably just say, yeah, don't be so serious and maybe have a little bit more fun.
Cool. Well, we could all use a little bit more fun in our lives.
I'm having more fun now, I'll say that.
Looking back, would you change anything?
uh, I don't I don't think so, to be honest. You know, I've always been somebody who, if I wasn't happy in what I was doing, I didn't do it. And, for a lot of people, and for me, that certainly equates to um, my job. And as a matter of fact, I just recently quit my corporate job of 6.5 years. Actually, that was the longest I'd ever been at any one job, because I started not to enjoy it. And I'm like, there is no way I can continue to do this if I don't enjoy it. I'm going to go find something that I enjoy. I enjoy doing. So I'm actually, ironically, now I'm focused on being a content creator for Pickleball, and loving every minute of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What scares you?
You know, Things happening to my family that aren't positive things. People having difficulties really in you know the family, whether it's finding out you know somebody's been lying to you for 3 years that they were dating each other, or you know just things that happened to the family. My brother had a big health scare. Guess it was about 7 years ago, and almost didn't make it. So if something happens to him, yeah, that definitely scares me.
Yeah, yeah, that's some hard stuff. Where do you see pickleball in the next 5 years?
Pretty much everywhere. I mean, if you think about it, we talked about, you know, pickleball courts, connected to restaurant establishments, and then you've got pickleball courts at RV parks, and obviously you've got it, in parks, and every 55 and over community now, I know, nowadays has a pickleball court. So 5 years from now, I think the majority of the population will also know about the sport. So you had mentioned till I reached out, you hadn't heard of it. I think in 5 years, I think just about everybody, at least in the US and Canada, will have heard of pickleball.
That's cool. That's cool. How about you personally?
Uh, can you ask the question again?
Where do you see yourself personally in the next 5 years?
Um, Personally, right now in terms of like where I lived, we moved from the Dallas, Texas area to be near family. So that's why I made the I made the change to Connecticut. But from a professional viewpoint, my guess is that yeah, I will be doing something related to pickleball as long as I still enjoy it.
Very good. Where can people find more about you?
They can come to my website, pickleballfire.com. I'm also on Facebook as Pickleball Fire. And yeah, I mean, feel free to reach out. You can also email me, Lynn, Lynn, at pickleballfire.com. But yeah, I'm happy to, help people find places to play or, people to teach them, if I don't live in your neck of the woods. And yeah, I'm totally happy to help anybody who's interested.
And we will post all your links with the show notes with this episode, so everybody has easy access to you and learn more about pickleball, because quite interesting sport to get into.
Well, all right. Well, I'm gonna check back with you in a month and see if you've started to play.
In a month, I'll probably be might be in Europe.
Well, hey, there's pickleball in Europe too. So
Any final thoughts?
it was great to be here, John. I really enjoyed the interview. I thought I love the questions you had there at the end. And, you just asked some great questions and you just, made me really think really deeply. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for introducing me to this very new, to me it's new. To me it's new. It's been here since 1965, but to me I just came about across it maybe a couple months ago because of you. So I appreciate you. I always enjoy learning about new sports that are up and coming sports. So and for you to be on the front lines and front and center with like your magazine and all the content that you're putting out for pickleball, I greatly appreciate you for all your hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Going through hard times is just a test. What you need to know is that when you get out of whatever you're going through, you will be stronger than ever before, and you don't need to go through it alone. Always know that you are not alone. Stay tuned for more real people with amazing stories that are just like yours. Until then, to everyone out there listening, I wish you a good morning, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you may be in this crazy world.